Hi, my name is J.D. Greer, and I'm pastor of the Summit Church. I'm really excited about this Bible study because in this Bible study, I'm going to talk with you about what it looks like to center your life on the gospel. You see, for most of us that grew up in evangelical churches, we understood the doctrines of the gospel. We knew, how to articulate what the gospel was, but the gospel for us was more like the diving board off of which we jumped into the pool of Christianity. It was the ABCs of Christianity. It was the entry right. It was how we began the Christian life. What I'm going to try to show you is that the gospel is not just the diving board off of which we jump into the pool of Christianity. The gospel is the pool itself. It's like Tim Keller says, it's not the ABCs of Christianity, it's the A through Z of Christianity. It's the whole thing from start to finish. And I'm going to try to show you why going deeper in the gospel is central to all Christian growth. And I want to help you see that real growth in Christ likeness it's never growth beyond the gospel, it's always growth deeper into the gospel. The gospel, you see, changes you and me in a way unlike religion ever could. Religion tells us what to go and do, but it's the gospel that gives us the power to do it. Religion gives us a list of things that we're supposed to go and do for God. The gospel makes us stand in awe of what God has done for us so that we change naturally, organically in response to it. You see, God's desire for us is not just that we do what's right, but that we do what's right because we love what's right. You see, He's not just after obedience. He's after a whole new kind of obedience, an obedience that is born from desire, an obedience that grows out of love. For many of you, Christianity has been wearisome. It's been a list of things that you need to be doing, things that you should be doing better. But true Christianity is not wearisome. True Christianity grows out of a love for God, where you do righteousness because you love righteousness. For many years, my own Christianity was wearisome. I constantly felt like there were things I need to be doing and things I need to be doing better. And I even began to resent God as always being the taskmaster who held over me this standard of things that I ought to be doing better. That is not how the gospel changes you. Paul in 1 Corinthians 13 at one point said that you could have the greatest of spiritual gifts. He said you could speak with the tongues of men and angels. He said that you could have radical obedience. I mean, the example he used is he said you could give your body to be burned. I mean, that's pretty committed. I mean, when, if you're sitting in church and the offering plate goes by and you take out a match and you light yourself on fire, that's about as radical as obedience or commitment to Christ gets. But Paul said that even if you did all those things, if you knew everything there was to know in Christianity and you had all the spiritual gifts and you were completely radical and sold out in your obedience, if you didn't have love for God, he said it's worthless. It's useless to God. The gospel is what creates that heart of love for God and for others in you. It's what creates in you a love for righteousness. 1 John 4:19, the Apostle John said it this way: we love Him because He first loved us. And so again, what I want to try to show you is that real Christian growth is never growth beyond the gospel, but it's growth deeper into the gospel. There's two things that I'm going to encourage you to do throughout this series. The first is I'm going to share with you a gospel prayer that I pray just about every single day. That's a way of centering myself on the gospel, a way of saturating myself in gospel truth so that I'm seeing God, myself, and my world out of the lens of the gospel. Basically, the prayer goes like this. The first part of the gospel prayer goes against our propensity toward works righteousness. It says, in Christ, there's nothing I could do that would make you love me more, and there's nothing I have done that makes you love me less. The second phrase of the gospel prayer goes to war against our idolatry, and that is, your presence, God, and your approval are all that I need today for everlasting joy. The third phrase of the gospel prayer addresses the radical response we ought to have to God and to others because of God's grace to us. And it goes like this: God, as you have been to me, so I will be to others. The fourth part of the gospel prayer addresses the audacious faith that you and I ought to have when we understand the generosity of God shown in the cross and the power that's shown in the resurrection. And the fourth part of the prayer basically says this: as I pray, I'm going to measure your compassion by the cross and your power by the resurrection. And then you're going to pray out of that generosity and out of that power. The second thing that I would encourage you to do throughout this study is I want you to take 40 days as you go through this study, and I want you to read through the Gospels. We're going to give you a reading plan that will take you through every chapter of the Gospels, because as you see Jesus in the Gospels, as you are confronted with his radical message that turns religion upside down, the gospel, I want these things to come alive in you so that you taste and you sense the power and beauty of the gospel. One of my favorite theologians, a guy named Jonathan Edwards, said that he said for many people, the gospel is like, it's like a man who knows in his mind that honey is sweet, but he's never had the sweetness burst alive in his mouth. There's a fundamental difference in knowing that honey is sweet and knowing from a firsthand sense of having that flavor come alive in your mouth, what that's like. For many people, that's the way the gospel is. It's that they know what the gospel says and they know the truths about the gospel, but they've never had those truths come alive in them. They believe them, but they've never had those truths ravage their soul. What I hope this series will do will help you see the gospel in a way that will create a desire in you to love and to serve God, and a desire to love and to serve others. Listen, I'm going to tell you, this is powerful stuff. I have found this to be the most powerful reality in my life. In Romans 1:16, Paul said that he was not ashamed of the gospel of Christ because it is the power of God. The only thing that Paul ever refers to as the power of God, other than Christ himself, is the gospel. So this is powerful stuff. So let's get started.